Do you think we've been visited before by something from other planets?
I think perhaps long, long ago, maybe. But there's another scenario there that has been overlooked in all of the discussions about UFOs and aliens, and at some point we'll talk about that.
Some point?
Yeah.
You tease. How dare you?
Well, you know, it's the kind of thing where you kind of need to lay out the case. And what I like to do is basically present the evidence and see if whoever then draws the same conclusions from that evidence that I have.
So,
but okay, let me put it to you this way. In what we were talking about at the very beginning of this interview, and talking about 7,000 generations of people, and the fact that in 4 or 5 generations we went from horseback to rocket ships. How many times in the last 7,000 years do you suppose that we could have done that? To me, it's not implausible that we could have achieved flight, even interplanetary flight, more than once. Just as we have now. Because think about it. We have achieved interplanetary flight, even though only manned expeditions to nearer space, but we're sending our satellites out beyond the solar system. All of this has come about in my lifetime.
Right.
Totally in my lifetime.
All of it since the 1950s.
Yeah, my grandfather, when he was a kid, you know, it was horses.
And a big point is that if we died off now, if there's some sort of mass extinction event, there'd be very little evidence of this space travel.
There'd be no evidence of it.
All the aluminum, all the stuff that the rockets are made out of, it would all be gone.
Right.
The Earth would absorb it.
Now let's just consider, as a wild, outrageous working hypothesis, that humans have been able to offload from the planet prior to the modern space age.
So at one point in time we went to Mars.
There's probably somewhere a little closer than that would have made sense.
Like the moon.
Like the moon.
Like we've been able to establish a base on the moon.
Yeah. Now, this is, like I said, I'm
this
admitting
is crazy
right
talk.
up front. This is an outrageous,
You're a Mason,
crazy
you're
talk.
a heretic. What else? You've done drugs?
Oh my
Dismiss
God.
this man. This is over.
It's time to lock me away. Gag me, muzzle me, and lock me away.
If we consider the fact that our civilization, you know, if all your theories are true, which they most certainly appear to be, our civilization has been rebooted as of 12,000 years ago. Modern civilization emerges somewhere around 7,000 years ago. In 4.6 billion years of life on Earth, or excuse me, of the life of the Earth existing, and then life on Earth being, you know, in our form, what, a few 100,000 years, right? And 100,000 years is a long time. That's 10 events since the big impact.
Yeah.
10 times.
Well, remember the Greenland ice core graph that I showed you? I mean, what you're seeing there is a dozen or more enormous events in the last 250,000 years. In the time, probably that again, the oldest human skeleton, modern human skeleton, is now dated to about 180,000 years. How much earlier than that were we? I don't know. But conservatively, we can say 180,000 years. That Greenland ice core graph that I showed you goes back 250,000 years.
So the Rig Veda stories of the Vimanas and the flying crafts and all that could actually have been based on real live objects, real live spaceships that
read the Sumerian stories. What did they say? In the wake of the flood, it was so disastrous that what did the gods do? They fled the earth and went to space. It says right there in the myth itself. It says they left. They left the earth and went to the heavens because what was going on the earth was so traumatic it even freaked them out. Read the story.
The gods.
The gods. Enki and Ea and Ninurta and the rest of them.
What did you think of Zecharia Sitchin and his fantastical translations of the Sumerian texts?
I'm dubious about some of his stuff.
Most are, right?
Yeah.
Most people who are experts in the Sumerian languages and cuneiform think that he was kind of cuckoo.
Kind of cuckoo, yeah.
Well, but what's fascinating is there's so much that they absolutely understood that's really confusing. Like they understood... They had an accurate depiction of our solar system, which included Pluto, which included all the planets in all the orbit in the correct, you know, relatively correct sizes on these clay tablets that they made 9,000, 7,000, who knows how many thousand years ago, you know?
Yeah, I guess I read some Sitchin stuff years and years ago, and at the time took it with a grain of salt. And subsequent to that, after I've seen some of the critiques of him, I'm kind of in that category myself of thinking his some of his translations are dubious.